I'm excited to share with you all that I've contributed a chapter to the newly published Anxiety Relief Handbook. The handbook provides a unique window into 11 highly effective complementary therapies for you to sample on your quest to ease anxiety. The ebook is available on my website, happynurse.com.au/anxiety relief handbook.
Most people want to go to work getting along with their colleagues and be able to go home and not have to worry about it. So it's in everyone's best interest that we start leaning into these courageous conversations, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, so that at the end of the day, we can go home to our beautiful families and not have to be caught up in that cycle of worrying about what's being said at work and getting a handle on that.
Welcome to the Happy Nurse podcast. Nurses are the backbone of healthcare, always there to care for strangers as if they were one of their own, often forsaking special moments with their own family in order to ensure another's loved one is being cared for. As nurses, self-care is essential. I am Ally Nitschke, nurse educator and self-care mentor for nurses. I'm an RN with 20 years of clinical experience. I have first-hand experience of stress and burnout. It was this experience which led me to develop a passion for personal development and pursue the study of mindfulness, meditation, hypnotherapy, and neuro-linguistic programming. Each episode, I will be promoting self-care strategies to those who always care for others. I have broken self-care down into 5 aspects: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and indulgence, to make it easy to ensure all your self-care needs are being met. Each episode, I will interview nurses and self-care gurus from around the world to help you with each aspect of your self-care. Welcome to the Happy Nurse podcast with Ally Nitschke. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Happy Nurse podcast. As you all know, I'm Elena, and today I am joined by Ally Nitschke. Ally is known as a high-performance leader and driven towards success. Ally's on a mission to teach people how to have courageous conversations and work with organisations to create courageous leaders. As a mother of 4 boys under 6, Ally can multitask like a boss. She's mastered the art of running a tight ship with military precision without compromising on creativity, collaboration, and fun. Ally believes in doing life on purpose and brings that philosophy into everything she does at work and at home. Ally's been working as a leader and with leaders for the last 15 years with a background in arts, finance, change management, and leadership. Ally is exceptional at connecting the dots and streamlining systems to ensure organisations and their people are ready for high performance. Hi, Ally. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's very exciting to be here.
It's lovely to have you here. And I was really excited to have you on to speak about these courageous conversations because I think as nurses, it's something we have to do quite regularly and we don't realise we're doing it at times. And I think there's a lot of stuff you could share with our listeners that they could really learn from.
Oh my goodness, yes. As you know, Courageous Conversations is certainly a passion point of mine, and it's one of those unique skills that you can share across all sorts of industries, all kinds of sectors. And I think right now, particularly with nurses and your listeners, it's more important than ever to be able to master these skills because there is so much going on right now in the world that we need to be talking about with either your team leaders or with your patients or whomever it happens to be.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we're the eyes and ears for the rest of the medical team and we are the patient's advocates. So we need to be able to communicate effectively with the rest of the team to ensure the patient is receiving the optimum care possible.
Absolutely.
So I'll start with my standard questions and then we can jump into the courageous conversations. As you know, I promote self-care to nurses. And as part of this, I talk about having a non-negotiable. What would be your non-negotiable in your self-care?
I love that you're talking about this, and I think it's something that we all talk about, but then when it actually comes to executing, I think that's where it gets a little bit hazy. So I too have some non-negotiables, and I have a non-negotiable every single day. So as you mentioned, I'm a mum of four, which is, can get pretty crazy sometimes. So my non-negotiable is I do something that is just for me. So not for the kids, not for my husband, not for anyone else. That's just for me. And it could be, we live quite close to the beach, so it could be, a 15-minute walk along the sand and getting earth that way. It could be a cup of tea. It could be a cup of hot tea, to be precise. It could be, it could be anything, but it's something that I carve out every single day that is, we could say selfish, and I'm sure as many mothers, particularly, and women do, something that is just for me and me alone is my non-negotiable self-care.
Yeah, and that's so important, especially as a busy mum of four boys. And they're all quite young still as well, aren't they?
They are. So I've got four under. Oh, my eldest has just turned 7. So 4, 7 and under. So they're 7, 5, 3 and 1. So they are still quite tiny, and they are definitely still quite nocturnal.
Wow, I can imagine why you need to run a tight ship. I have 2 boys and they're about to turn 12 and 8. They've both got their birthdays within 2 weeks of each other, but they've got me running around in circles sometimes. So yeah, maybe I need to get some parenting tips from you after this. Yeah, you do, and I know what it's like having the boys in the house. It's crazy, and you do just need to carve out that 5 minutes for yourself or 15 minutes for yourself every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, you do. Yeah. So that's scheduled in, and that's a non-negotiable each and every day.
I created a model of self-care that broke it down into 5 different aspects because self-care often gets associated with bubble baths, trips to the spa, going and getting your hair done, where I realized that it goes much, much deeper than that. So I've broken it down into the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and the indulgent aspects of our self-care. What would be your idea of the indulgent self-care?
Oh, I know you mentioned about bubble baths, but I actually have a Sunday self-care ritual. So once all the babies are in bed, I draw myself a very nice deep bath. And I'm not sure if you've got this over there in WA, but we've got a store called Lush, which is all natural, luxurious bath products and bath bombs and that type of thing. So I actually do have a Lush bath bomb bath, and it is so luxurious, and I absolutely love it and do it every Sunday without fail. And interestingly, I was talking to my husband about this just the other day. A few years ago, I went trekking in India, in the Himalayas, like way out in the wilderness.
Wow.
And the funny part of the story is we couldn't shower or bath or anything like that. We were literally, had a couple of donkeys and things. Were trekking through the Himalayas. And when we got back to base camp, we were able to have showers. But what the showers were was actually a bucket of hot water and a bucket of cold water. And my appreciation for hot water is like knows no bounds. I absolutely love sinking into a hot tub. Like I find that to be incredibly relaxing, incredibly indulgent, particularly when no one is there to bother me. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. And I'm a single mom. I don't know if you know that, but I try and have these baths, and then 2 minutes later, I've got this little head. Can I come in with you? And I'm like, no, wait, leave me alone, buddy. My youngest. I'm like, well, you're 8, so it's kind of wrong. You can't come in the bath with me now. But yeah, it's just trying to find that space. So yeah, when you do it when the kids are all in bed, awesome idea. Mine are just too old now. They're up late, so.
Yeah, well, our kids are still quite young, so they go to bed fairly early and they also wake up fairly early, so I can very easily have a Sunday night bath without too much problems. I'm very lucky for right now.
And Lush is awesome. They've even got that back in the UK.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they've got them over there too.
Oh, fabulous.
If you enjoy meditating or you would like to give meditation a try, why not head on over to happynurse.com.au/meditation to download my free guided meditation for stress and anxiety relief. It's 12 minutes of pure self-care.
I always speak about being the best version of ourselves because I think if we're striving to always be the best version of ourselves, we can deliver the best possible patient care.
Yeah.
So who or what inspires you to be the best version of yourself?
Yeah, I love that question, and I think it's so true. One of the daily practices that I follow is around who needs me on my A game. So every morning I've got a little Crush It Daily thing that I fill out, and one of the questions on there is who needs me on my A game. So depending on what day of the week it is or what I have coming up will really depend on how I fill that out. But having that really specific intention around how it is that you're going to show up. If you're at work, then it's for your patients. It could be for clients. On the weekend, it's for my kids. If it's something else, that I need to show up for my husband, it's around really getting clear on who and how I need to show up for each and every morning when I wake up. So my kids mostly.
That's awesome that you've got that intention and you actually think about it every morning. I love that you do that as part of your practice.
Yeah, it's good.
Because I think if we live lives of intention, then things just seem to flow and go a lot more smoothly than if we're just running by the seat of our pants. Hence your tight ship with your 4 kids.
Yeah.
And I think, the kids they're one of my big inspirations as well, because I think if they can see me following my dreams and going after what I want, it's encouraging them to do the same thing when they grow up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in a world right now where we're raising children in 2020 particularly, it's more important than ever to let them know and demonstrate resilience and demonstrate, challenging the status quo, because they get enough outside influence, whether it's from the media, whether it's from school, they get enough of that to bring them down. We need to make sure that we're the people that are standing in for them and showing them that there is always a better way.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so with you on that. I actually just printed out Brene Brown's Wholehearted Parenting Manifesto and stuck it on the fridge for the kids.
So good.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah.
Anyway, if you want to look that up, I'll put the link in the show notes because it's downloadable on our website. So let's get to the nitty-gritty of these courageous conversations. I remember listening to you on Samantha Riley's podcast, and I was in the car and I was driving to work, and you were talking about the 5 steps, and I just thought, oh my goodness, I need to get Ally on my podcast because this is gold for us as nurses. So I would love you to share your expertise with us.
Yeah, sure. I would love to. And I call it the 5 steps to a courageous conversation, because what happens, and particularly in the workplace, and this even happens at home, but I'm talking mainly in a workplace instance, is that we get so much of the actual having the conversation caught up in our own head. So step 1 of the courageous conversations is around mastering your stories. So this is all what I call the head junk, the itty bitty shitty committee. It could be that internal monologue that's telling you this and that, and it could be an entire story that we're conjuring up in our mind. For example, you might have someone at work that you currently clash with, and there'll be something that happens. It won't be a big thing, and then you walk away from the desk and your internal monologue will start going on and conjure up an entire story about how they, side-eyed you and that meant this, and I'm sure they talked about you last weekend and they don't really like you and they think this and this and this about you. And what we really need to master is firstly identifying that that's the problem, that we're actually making this entire story up in our head, and then secondly being able to change those internal thoughts. So there's a really great process that I use, and it's similar to a windscreen wiper on a car, and it's just you do that across your eyes, so across your actual vision, and you can go cancel, and that is a pattern interrupt for your own internal dialogue and monologue that can very often get out of control. So that is step 1.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because I speak about us being mind readers, and that's what we're doing in that situation, isn't it? We think we know what someone else is thinking, when actually it's just all the story we're creating in our own mind.
Yeah. So a mind reader, but then also a bit of an embellisher as well. So we do tend to conjure it up into a huge thing that doesn't end up being that way at all. So that's step 1, is master your stories. And then step 2, and this is around when you're actually going to have a courageous conversation. So this is go on a fact-finding mission. So very often we will respond or react on something that we've either said or heard second or third hand. It could be gossip, or we might even be reacting on what we talked about just a second ago, on the stories that we're telling ourselves. So going on a fact-finding mission, finding out what is actually true, what is real, questioning your own internal monologue and your own head junk to get to the bottom of that. And a really great self-coaching question for this one is that true? And how do I know it's true?
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah. I often encourage my listeners to use the acronym THINK. Is it true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, or kind? And
Awesome.
I get them to look at their stories through that lens as well.
That's great. I love that. I haven't heard of that acronym before.
Yeah, it's very useful.
Yeah, it's great. And then step 3 is begin with the end in mind. So more often than not, the reason that we get so caught up with not having a courageous conversation is that we don't actually know what we want the outcome to be. So courageous conversations are solution, resolution, or progress focused. So we always want to be getting to some kind of end result or moving forward in some manner. So beginning with the end in mind, what is it that you actually want to have happen? You know, if it's with a colleague that you're having a hard time with, do you want to be able to mend that relationship to be able to have a better working relationship? If it's patients, where do you want to be directing these families to? Is there, some kind of process that you're already following? Perhaps it's even your own leader or supervisor. You know, what is it that you actually want to happen as a result of the conversation? So once you know what you want the result to be, it's a lot easier to work backwards. So that is step 3, begin with the end in mind.
That's awesome. You can focus on the outcome that you're aiming for rather than going into the story.
That's right, yeah. And then step 4 is plan it out. So once we've mastered our stories and we've figured out what it is that we're telling ourselves about the particular situation, and then we've also gone on our fact-finding mission, so we've found out what it is that's real and what's not real, we know where we want the conversation to go. So those first 3 steps make out the plan it out, and this is where we go, okay, well, we know I was telling myself this, this, and this. We know that here is the real story. What I want to happen is that we can mend this relationship by doing X, Y, and Z so that we can have a great working professional relationship, and plan it out that way is step 4, plan it out. And then we move on to step 5, which I call find the space. So this is a sort of a little bit two-pronged. So holding space for someone, because courageous conversations can be quite, as the name suggests, confrontational. It also usually means that there's going to be some kind of emotion involved. So whether it's someone who has a release of emotion and gets quite teary, or it could be someone that gets quite defensive and angry as well. So making sure that when we find the space, that the physical space, the environment is appropriate. So we wouldn't be having a courageous conversation in the middle of the floor. We wouldn't be having a courageous conversation in a meeting, but really finding a space where there is an understanding that you can have an open, honest, and frank conversation that moves to a resolution, solution, or progress.
Awesome. Yeah. That space and where you're delivering what you need to say is crucial. But I think as nurses, we're on the run, and especially when it comes to medical staff, we have to grab them when we can. So what would be your suggestion there if you're having to, I know there's a lot of younger nurses who struggle with approaching medical staff, and they'll often come to us older nurses to go and speak to the doctors on their behalf. So have you got any tips for them for actually being able to do it on their own?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can definitely do it on their own. So the first one would be unpacking that step 1, the master your stories. So there would be something going on in those younger nurses' minds where they've gone, okay, I need to get a more senior nurse to talk to this doctor. And it could be something like, I'm not good enough, I haven't been here long enough, they're not going to listen to me because I'm young, which is all internal monologue and not factual in any way. So getting a handle on that, and then actually trying to build the relationship with those doctors outside of needing to have a courageous conversation with them as well. So it could be you bump into them in the tea room. It could be you just, happen to remember that they had a kid's birthday party on the weekend. Whatever it happened to be is those little minuscule instances where we can build relationship and build trust over time. And if they do need to speak to a doctor, we do a thing called a pre-frame. So, hi, Dr. So-and-so, I'd really like to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. Please let me know when you have a time today, this week, however important it happens to be.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great idea with the pre-frame. And yeah, as you say, trying to communicate with them away from when you're having to have these courageous conversations too is gold, because you need to build that relationship with these medical staff. And I think I remember, and I'm the same, I try to stay away from doing any kind of agency work because I like my comfort zone, and I'm quite happy to admit that. And I work with the same team of doctors all the time, but I've got a really good relationship with them. They understand me, I understand them. They know my capabilities, and they give me a deal of autonomy with dealing with their patients. But I don't like going outside of my comfort zone, because I then am in that position where I have to kind of put myself in these courageous conversation situations. So yeah, it's not just the junior ones, probably. I think us older nurses are in the same boat. So yeah, thank you. That's gold.
Absolutely. And I think one of the beautiful things about being comfortable and getting outside of your comfort zone is when you start to really unpack the circle of comfort and the circle of growth. When you start feeling uncomfortable in that comfort zone and then you push through it, that's when you sort of know that you are going into bigger and better things. So doing the things that scare you anyway, because the outcome is going to be so much better. So when we're talking comfort zone, it's, is it comfort or is it just the familiarity zone, something that you feel really familiar with? And then when we move out of the comfort zone through the fear zone into the learning zone before we get to that growth zone, that's when we start getting into some really cool stuff. You get the vulnerability, you get the courage, you get all sorts of really great things around having your own self-belief and owning mistakes. So there's a lot of good stuff on the other side of bumping up against that comfort zone for sure.
Oh yeah, totally. And going into business as a nurse has been a huge growth trajectory for me, because we don't get taught this stuff. But yeah, it's still at work. I can definitely use your tips with the courageous conversations. I think they're gold.
Oh, wonderful. I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you'd like to share?
I think that just understanding really that the reason that we avoid having these courageous conversations is more often than not based on something that is totally made up in our head. So at the end of the day, when we're in the workplace, I like to give everyone a generous assumption. So most people want to do the right thing. Most people want to go to work getting along with their colleagues and be able to go home and not have to worry about it. So it's in everyone's best interest that we start leaning into these courageous conversations, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, so that at the end of the day, we can go home to our beautiful families and not have to be caught up in that cycle of worrying about what's being said at work and getting a handle on that. So where you can lean into the uncomfortableness, because there's so much good stuff on the other side when you can have those courageous conversations without it being a big issue.
Yeah, totally. This beautifully fits into the mental aspect of my model of self-care, because I speak about this inner critic, this voice, the dialogue, these stories that we tell ourselves, and they can stop us in our tracks and really hold us back. So yeah, unpacking that, realizing when we're going into these stories and we're doing the shoulds and the coulds and the mind reading is a huge key to your self-care, really, because then if you're aware of that and you're addressing these aspects every day, it allows you to enjoy that indulgent aspect even more, because you don't, as you just said, you don't have all that mind chatter, that worry. You're leaving work at work. You're quite happy with who you are and what you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it might have been earlier this year or maybe it was late last year, but World Health Organization recently declared burnout as a syndrome. And I also saw, I'm not sure if you've heard of Dr. Libby. She's up in Queensland, but does a lot around natural health, eating natural food for optimal health.
Okay.
And she's recently done a study on stress. All these women were coming in and they're all quite stressed. And she's like, what is it that is causing stress, which then leads to disease? And what she found was that the biggest contributor to stress was the stories that we're telling ourselves. So imagine if we could get a handle on those, and then we would reduce our stress levels, which of course would reduce burnout, which would of course reduce absenteeism and all sorts of other things. So yes, it is very much the starting point, I believe.
Yeah, definitely, because that burnout being classified as a syndrome last year was huge. They've actually acknowledged that it's happening and it's present. And I think stress is the second most compensated work-related illness in Australia at the moment, if you look at the figures. So
Yeah.
it's it's a big issue that we need to deal with. And there's this new phenomenon too in the healthcare industry called compassion fatigue, where it's just that, we kind of become so overwhelmed with the amount of stress and trauma that we're witnessing that we can no longer offer compassion and empathy to these patients. And that's burnout is a contributing factor to that. So if we can address that stories we're telling ourselves, it can really stop us going down the path towards that burnout and compassion fatigue.
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't heard about that, but it makes perfect sense as well, because it takes a lot to be able to give empathy and show compassion to someone whilst also being able to manage what is right now a very heavy workload for many in the healthcare sector. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's something that I'm passionate about and I speak about quite regularly. But I ran a webinar on the weekend, and there was a few nurses jumped on who were actually in isolation in Victoria, having been exposed to patients who have got COVID-19. And it kind of opened my eyes into just what my colleagues over East are dealing with, because here in WA, I'm very, very grateful to be in the position I am. And my colleagues back home in Scotland, they're obviously on the last line of defence with the virus too. So that added stress that's on us on top of what we already were dealing with is huge at the moment. And I can imagine that the stories are probably running rampant in people's heads. So this has been an awesome conversation to have with you, to offer people some extra tips and strategies to help deal with what could be going on in the mind chatter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm lucky. I'm in Adelaide in South Australia as well. So we don't have many cases here either, but my heart is and thoughts are always going out to those on the eastern seaboard who are very much doing it tough, and those particularly in the medical field who are doing incredibly long hours away from family and friends. And, thank you to all of your listeners and all of the work that you and the rest of your nurses around Australia, the work that they're doing to keep us safe and really putting themselves in there. So where you can, take some time out for yourself. And if that means that you need to go and be indulgent and have a hot cup of tea, then absolutely go and do that, because it's very important to fill your own cup. You aren't able to help the rest of the country if there's, if you're stressed and burnt out, and it's not a great place to be either. So please take care of yourself.
Thank you. I'm sure my listeners will really appreciate that. Thank you, Ally.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful chatting to you. Thanks for jumping on.
Thank you.
I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Elena. Have a beautiful day.
You too.
All right. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Happy Nurse podcast. If you've enjoyed today's content and would like to join the Happy Nurse community, head over to Facebook and check out the Happy Nurse AU Facebook page and request to join the Happy Nurse community. Also, check out happynurse.com.au for access to free downloads and subscription to my blog. See you soon, and in the meantime, remember to always offer yourself the same compassion that you so freely give to others. I'm excited to share with you all that I've contributed a chapter to the newly published Anxiety Relief Handbook. The handbook provides a unique window into 11 highly effective complementary therapies for you to sample on your quest to ease anxiety. The ebook is available on my website, happynurse.com.au/anxiety relief handbook.